LSI for the invitation. So I'm Olivier Delporte, CEO of Miracor Medical, and at Miracor Medical, we treat with heart attacks. I'm sure all of you know someone or of someone who has suffered a heart attack, a myocardial infarct. And basically what we do is we treat myocardial infarct, the heart attack, to prevent heart failure. We've heard about heart failure a lot in the last presentations. It's an epidemic. We all know how important that is. So who are we at Miracor? We're a European medical device company, 32 people as we speak, and I heard a few presentations ago, 30,000 patients treated. We actually treated exactly 300 patients this morning in Europe. So when I woke up, I had the message, number 300 is treated. So 300 patients treated. We're addressing the significant unmet need of heart failure prevention, and we're doing that with our PiCSO system, which is CE marked breakthrough designation, and which is a system that aims at reducing infarct size for acute infarct patients. So the markets we're tackling are, first of all, mostly the acute infarct patients, ST elevation MI patients, anterior STEMI, those are the highest risk acute infarcts. That's where we start, that's our beachhead. We've actually also this morning enrolled our first patient in a randomized trial in inferior STEMI, or second large market. So both of those together are north of $10 billion. We have a couple of other markets in which a few patients have been treated, like high-risk cardiogenic shock, yet as a small company, don't have yet a prospective clinical study in these indications. We've got plans. So all in all, targeting more than $15 billion market size. The unmet need on the acute infarct size and the heart failure is really the microvascular dysfunction and the fact that today patients are treated in the cath lab. When a patient has an acute infarct, chest pain, pain in the arm, as you know, call 911 or 112, get an ambulance, bring the patient to the cath lab for the patient to be, in 99% of the cases, stented, basically unclog the artery and save the life of that patient. And so over the last 10, 20 years, the care has improved, and most patients are saved by the stenting and the primary PCI procedure, but they leave the cath lab with scar. The myocardium is injured. 10, 20, 30% of the left ventricle is dead. And so mortality is going down, but as the patients leave the cath lab with a scar, that leads to heart failure. And actually, the acute infarct is a leading determinant for heart failure. So our therapy aims at reducing infarct size. There is a very strong link between infarct size, which is basically a measure of how much of the left ventricle is dead, necrosed, after the acute infarct. And there is a very strong correlation between reducing infarct size and reducing mortality, as well as heart failure hospitalization. And heart failure hospitalization is critical because of the health economics behind that. How do we do that? We do that with the PiCSO system. PiCSO stands for Pressure-Controlled Intermittent Coronary Sinus Occlusion. It's a catheter and console system used by the interventional cardiologist in the cath lab. And here is how it works. This is the PiCSO catheter, which is positioned via venous femoral access in the coronary sinus via the right atrium, and it starts being inflated and deflated in cycles while the stent is going to be positioned. So it's an adjunct therapy. It's used simultaneously as the stenting procedure in the cath lab by the interventionalist. And what the PiCSO does, it basically inflates and deflates. When it inflates, it elevates the pressure, which redistributes blood flow to areas of the myocardium that would not get blood without the pressure elevation. And the system monitors coronary sinus pressure, and the algorithm detects when to inflate and deflate. The therapy lasts approximately 30 to 45 minutes. So the mechanism of action is redistribution of flow to clear microcirculation, and when the balloon is deflated, there is a washout, evacuating toxic metabolites and debris from the microcirculation. So in short, it's clearing microcirculation is what PiCSO does. Clinical results to date. Most of the 300 patients have been treated as part of clinical studies, and we have shown in different clinical studies improvements in infarct size and in microcirculatory function. in anterior STEMI patients. Those are published. On the basis of these studies, which were non-randomized, we've started randomized studies. And the first one for anterior STEMI called PiCSO MI1 is enrolling well and will be completely enrolled by September, plus minus a few weeks of this year. And we've just started actually this morning with the first patient enrolled, the second randomized study for inferior STEMI patients. Clinical and regulatory, the currently enrolling study in Europe is not needed for regulatory purposes. We have CE mark. It's really a study for guidelines, for reimbursement, and for de-risking the US IDE study, which will be started once we have the results from PiCSO MI1 later this year. The study design of the IDE is agreed to with the FDA and should start early next year. The CE mark we have is under MDD. We're currently under review for MDR. We should have the MDR CE mark later this year. And we're also assessing the pathways both in China and Japan that we would address in the next year with partners. Commercially, so we have CE mark, as I said. We're not going all out. It's not about revenue max at this stage. We're focusing more on clinical studies. But with the CE mark, we're using the product selectively in a few hospitals in Europe to support reimbursement, to support and prove price point, which is going to reflect the health economic value proposition of the therapy at a price point between, or around the $10,000, maybe a bit more, reflecting the health economic value proposition. So until the data of end of this year, it's really selective commercialization. Next year, based on reimbursement in Europe, there will be an investment into commercialization. Competitive landscape in this multi-billion-dollar market, there are today really three contenders. One is a company called Therox with supersaturated oxygen that's been purchased by Zoll. They are already in the market in the US. The second one is Abiomed that many of you know with the Impella device currently in studies for anterior STEMI patients. And PiCSO is the third one. We believe that based on clinical results that are to date very promising for PiCSO and ease of use, PiCSO being easy to use, shorter in time, safer than some of the other devices, we have a leading position or will have a leading position in this large market. And to put it all into a strategic roadmap, I've talked about PiCSO MI1, first randomized study that will be completely enrolled by September, plus minus a few weeks. So the primary endpoint will be at least internally available in Q4. That will be a gating item to starting the IDE study, which will start enrolling early next year. We've just started the inferior STEMI study, as I said, which will enroll until sometime early next year. We have a post-market clinical follow-up study. We expect the complete approval from the FDA for the IDE later this year. Still have one or two test results to provide to them, but the study design is agreed to. Commercialization, strategic focus this year, some expansion next year. A lot of work being done today on reimbursement. We've internalized reimbursement. And financing-wise, so we are starting in the next months a financing round effort to raise around end of the year, basically in conjunction with the results from PiCSO MI1. So the data will be available under NDA to interested parties in Q4. And that financing round of around 70 million euros will fund the company through PMA approval at the end of 2025. All of that would not be possible without the team, very experienced, all medtech experienced, large and small companies. And with that, my time is up. Thank you very much. Meet me in the breakout room. Thank you.